Every morning began the same for Maria Ortega. Room keys jingling in her pocket, a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, and the sterile scent of bleach filling the quiet, carpeted halls of the Ravenwood Hotel. She had learned every corner, every nuance of the place. The creaky elevator that stalled briefly between floors 2 and 3, the somber color palette of tans and burgundies, and the faint hum of air conditioners kicking on and off. The day she entered room 309 started like every other shift. Maria inspected her checklist in the employees' lounge. 309 was circled with red marker, an unusual note from the morning supervisor. She didn't think much of it at first. Some guests left a disaster behind. Others packed their bags neatly as though they'd never stayed. What she didn't realize at the time was how room assignments could sometimes be warnings. She loaded her cart with towels, fresh sheets, and assorted sprays and headed up. When she reached the 3rd floor, however, something felt off. The air was cooler, almost damp, as if the space hadn't been aired out in days. The hallway lights flickered faintly, throwing long shadows onto the doors. Room 309 sat at the far end of the corridor, a dim aisle that somehow seemed miles longer than the rest. When her keycard slid into the electronic lock, the door let out an unsettling click. Not unusual, but loud enough to make her flinch. She pushed it open, and the sight inside stopped her cold. Most hotel rooms after checkout were either trashed or eerily pristine, but 309, it wasn't either. The bedspread had been stripped bare, pulled tight to the floor as though dragged. The curtains hung askew, letting thin beams of light slice through the dim, suffocating room. On the desk were 2 glasses, untouched, with clear water inside, and a plate sitting between them with a heavy layer of fine dust coating its surface. The air smelled faintly of mildew, spiked with something sharp. Chemicals, maybe, or faint ammonia. She glanced towards the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, but darkness lay beyond it. Maria shook her head, telling herself there was nothing unusual here, just another messy stay. People were strange. They'd been stranger before. She approached the bed to change the sheets, but when she stepped closer to the nightstand, her foot struck something small but heavy, sending it rolling slightly beneath the bed frame. She crouched to retrieve it. When her fingers touched metal, a chill ran up her spine. She pulled the object into the light and froze. It was a small, ornate locket, heart-shaped and gleaming in the streaks of sunlight breaking through the room's crooked curtains. Inside the locket's metal casing was engraved text, clear enough to read, "To my forever, M." She turned it over, expecting to find the rest of the inscription, but instead, on the back were 2 deep scratches. Not accidental scratches, but deliberate gouges. She flicked the clasp open, revealing a haunting image painted inside. 2 figures, a man and a woman, dressed in black funeral attire. Their painted faces were pale, unnerving, with shadows drawn where their eyes should have been. Maria blinked hard, trying to steady the chill that crept through her. The locket wasn't hers, obviously. It was someone's forgotten keepsake. But something about it felt wrong. She couldn't place why or how, but unease clung to her. Maria placed the locket on the desk and shifted her focus to the bathroom, hoping to shake the eerie sensation bearing down on her. As she reached for the bathroom door, the faint sound of scratching tensed her shoulders. It wasn't loud, but subtle, faint. She stopped, her pulse drumming in her ears. It was probably an air vent kicking up dust, or perhaps loose pipes in the walls. Hotels were full of strange noises. That's what she told herself. She shoved the door open in one swift motion, but the room beyond was empty. Dark tiles greeted her, slick and gleaming under idle streaks of light. She flipped on the light switch overhead. It flickered sluggishly. The tub was stained faintly with rust, the smell sharper here. A hand towel sat crumpled in the corner, except it wasn't just a towel. As she stepped closer, she realized something was wrapped tightly inside it. Her fingers brushed tentative against the fabric's edge, peeling it open. Her breath caught. The towel concealed photographs, aged ones, sepia-toned. Each one depicted the same couple from the locket, but now standing before various landmarks. A crumbling stone bridge, a barren forest where trees looked clawed and skeletal, and finally what appeared to be the hotel itself, though older, steeped in decades of apparent wear. The Ravenwood looked haunting in the picture. The couple stood at its entrance, barely visible, consumed by shadows as though behind them something else had hovered carefully out of frame. Maria stood frozen. The snapping feeling of fear hovered on her tightening breath, and her instincts screamed, "Leave." But she couldn't. Holding the photographs, her first thought was the front desk, that someone had left their belongings behind, that it was her duty to return them. But pressing deeper through her frantic logic was something worse, an icy whisper warning her these shouldn't be touched. The faint scratching noise started again, only it was louder now, emanating from behind her. She turned, and where the plate had been on the desk, she saw faint movement, something brushing across the surface. A shadow. No, it wasn't possible for shadows to move like that. Her pulse rose sharply. Her feet carried her to the door before she was halfway aware she'd moved. She burst into the hallway, leaving the door wide open, gripping the photos. But when Maria reached the front desk and stammered barely coherent explanations, no one seemed to take her seriously. "You must be mistaken," the concierge replied coldly. "Room 309 isn't occupied. It hasn't been checked out this morning. It hasn't been checked in this week." Maria froze mid-sentence. "What?" "It was circled. On my list. The supervisor," she managed to say weakly. The concierge exchanged nervous glances with another employee. "Room 309 is listed vacant," he repeated, slower. Maria's world began to fray. She stared at the photos in her trembling grip, the haunting couple staring back. When the concierge leaned in to inspect them, his face paled. "That couple," he started to say, but stopped sharp. His throat caught. Maria urged him on. "What?" Maria's world began to fray. She stared at the photos in her trembling grip, the haunting couple staring back. When the concierge leaned in to inspect them, his face paled. "That couple," he started to say, but stopped sharp. His throat caught. Maria urged him on. "What? What is it?" He pushed the photos away. "Those people stayed here a long time ago. They're not alive anymore." Something cold twisted in her stomach. As her shift ended and the hotel emptied, Maria swore she'd never enter room 309 again. But strange things don't leave innocently. That very night, her TV at home, off but powered, reflected faint shapes that no show ever filmed. Sitting shadows inexplicable began slow, impossible forms amongst blinking interference. Maria's breath caught, her instinct urging her to look away, yet she remained transfixed by the inexplicable display.